You should not learn SQL. Instead, what you should learn is how to handle data using SQL. So if you Google online, you will see most of the online resources and courses are teaching you the syntax of the language rather than the actual point of using SQL in the first place. So in this video, I want to show you a simple example of what the language is capable of and how we can use SQL for data handling. Hey, what's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Aslah here. So if you have seen my previous videos, you probably might know that I work with Salesforce, and Salesforce uses an Oracle relational database, and I use SQL for a fair amount of time at work. So from my experience, what I have learned is, unlike what my university taught me in my final year, knowing SQL is not about knowing the syntax, it's about knowing when to use it and how to handle the data when you use it. Syntax is something you can easily look up. Anytime your query gets too complicated, you can simply surf the internet, and there's so many resources out there that will help you find the right syntax. But if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you have an understanding of what a database is. If not, a database is simply a well-organized collection of structured information or data. So you can think of a database as a bunch of tables, and each of these tables having few rows and columns. So if it's a relational database, one table will be related to another. So I thought Salesforce would be a great way to explain SQL, since I can show you the front end and back end of what happens to the data without me having to create any connection between both the ends. So even if you don't know what Salesforce is, I promise you this would all make sense at the end. So before we jump in, some Salesforce lingo. Salesforce calls the tables we mentioned earlier as objects, and the rows as records, and its columns as fields. So Salesforce has objects with fields and a bunch of records. Let's jump right into Salesforce Object Manager or Table Manager and see what we're gonna do. So we are here in the Salesforce Table Manager. Salesforce calls tables object, as we spoke earlier. So we can see here there are a bunch of tables over here. There's so many tables. These are standard objects and there are custom tables or custom objects. So we are interested in a specific table. For example, let's say contacts. So contacts has lots of fields, which stands for columns in a table. So we can see there are different columns like account name, there are facts, address, mailing address, first name, last name. So let's go ahead and create a new contact, and let's see how we can use SQL in order to query the contact we just inserted. So I'm here on a contact layout, page layout, and we can come here and create a new contact. So let's say Mr. First name is gonna be Aslah, last name is Hussein, and let's try to connect this to an account. Between account and contacts, it's one-to-many relation, so that means an account can have many contacts, but one contact can have only one account. Now let's go to our VS Code and see what we have here. So I'm gonna zoom in a bit. So this is an Apex class I wrote, and I have a method called getContacts here. So you don't have to worry about what's going on here. Our focus here is to just focus on the query. So I wrote this method just for us to query and get a debug log. So what we're gonna do here is, first I'm gonna run a command so we can get the logs. And let's see. So right now we have a query here, select name from contact. So contact is the table, name is the column. So if we run this query right now, we're gonna get all the contacts and name of all those contacts from the database. So let's check how many contacts are there in total right now. So if we look at all the contacts, so we have 21 contacts in total. So if we run this query and print it, we're gonna get all of them with all their names. So this is not what we need. We need exactly what the record we just inserted, which is my first name and last name. So I'm gonna add a clause here where last name equals Hussein, and I'm gonna save it and then run the test. So this is a bit of workaround in order for me to get a debug log inside the terminal, but let's not focus on that and just see what we get here. So if you look here, so see we have here my first name and last name. This is exactly the data we inserted. So let's go a bit more further and see, add a bit more more columns over here, so we get all the other info as well. So first name, so let me reorder this into first name and last name. Okay, so I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna run it again so we get the log. So let's look at the log now. So now we have all the columns. So now we have the name, we have the first name, last name. So this is exactly what we inserted. So we are querying the data we just inserted in the front end and we are getting here in the back end. So let's go a bit more further and see what we can actually do with this query. So looking at this query, it's not that hard. SQL is really not that hard language to learn. Just by reading it would make sense. So you're saying select name, first name, last name from contact, where contact is a table, last name, first name, and name is a column in the table, and we are just getting the rows of that table by querying. So it's not really hard. Like I said in the beginning of this video, it gets complicated when you have more relations and stuff, but the syntax is something you can really easily Google and find out if you know what relation to one table to the other is. So let's see what else we can do with this data right now. So we have queried this. Let's say I want to add an email address to the data that I just inserted, so the record. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to refer to my variable and refer to the column that we have on the table contact, which is email, which my VS Code extension is autofilling it for me. So you can see there's a picture of object over here. So object basically stands for table in the Salesforce lingo. So email, and I'm gonna say my email is going to be techie@random.com. So let's just say a random email. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna update the record that I just inserted. So I'm gonna say update contact. So update is basically a DML statement. DML is data manipulation language. So DML statement, it's gonna do is it's gonna update the record that I just inserted. So now let's print out. Before we print out, let's also add email here and see what we get. So run, and I'm gonna run the test so we can see what we have. So I just printed, so this is our latest log. So you can see my first name, last name again, and there is a new column which is email, which is basically the email I just inserted. So this is what I was trying to explain in the beginning of the video. It's not about the syntax of the SQL itself. It's about once you query, what you do with the data. So right now we inserted a record and we queried that specific record and we updated a column in that record. So there's a hell lot of things that you can do with SQL. Right now there are so many possibilities that you can do. You can query this data, you can send it to a front-end component, and front-end can display it over the website or wherever you want to display it, and you can streamline this data to any other service. If you're making a call out to an external API service, you can send this data by querying it. So it's about what you do, how you manipulate the data, rather than knowing the exact syntax, which you can easily look up. I hope all of this made sense, but if you have any questions, do let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. I will talk to you guys in the next one. Cheers.